Since March of 2020, so much has changed. How we work, how we live, the tools we use, the way we collaborate. Hello and welcome to The Bridge. Join host Scott Kinka in a series of discussions of how some of the top leaders in technology bridged their businesses, technology, roadmaps, and lives into their new hybrid work reality. Our hope is that their insights and experiences will help you on your journey in business and in life, from who we were to who we are today. And maybe it'll help you get better prepared for whatever comes next. The Bridge is a service of Bridgepoint Technologies, one of the nation's leading IT advisory, procurement, and lifecycle management companies. Now, here's your host.
Hi, and welcome to The Bridge. I'm Scott Kinka. My guest on this episode is Maile Kaiser. She's the Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Coresite. She's been there for about 11 years. In her past, she was at Oracle and IO Data Centers, which eventually became Iron Mountain. Personally, 3 kids, 2 dogs, loves to travel. But in terms of Coresite, they're a domestic data center provider owned by American Tower, who is one of the largest global REITs. Coresite's data centers are in 10 major markets in the U.S., or what they consider interconnection-rich data center campuses. Let me read that back to you. Interconnection-rich data center campuses. Their focus is on building communities of companies that together interoperate their workloads. Kind of a right tool for the right job approach. Storage here, back office in the Colos, scale computing and app front ends in the public cloud, applications for CRM and collaboration connect out to them. Coresite wants to be in the middle of all that, effectively functioning as the new headquarters for the business. Now, of course, that we've seen the importance of the actual headquarters wane post-pandemic. From there, obviously, in their data centers, they're expecting their customers to connect out in logical, in some case, private connections to the various apps and providers in the community. It's not all that unlike some of the other stories we've heard from data center providers at the end of the day. We know data centers are real estate at the core, but I really enjoyed Coresite's story around this interconnection-rich campus and community. Also interesting is how they think about what they're calling the repatriation of data into the colo from public hyperscalers. Customers have learned that limitless scale is valuable, but not necessary, and certainly more expensive in most cases than static workloads. This really comes down to a simple question, in particular in the data center space, but I think across many of the sessions we've had lately. Compete or coexist? I think our post-pandemic IT strategy has really changed how service providers of all kinds think about that question. Coexist is the principal theme behind Coresite's approach. Their open cloud exchange, which is a logical network connection platform for customers in their data centers. I won't steal her thunder. She tells the story much better than I could possibly tell it. You'll need to listen in to learn a little bit more. This is my conversation with Maile Kaiser, the Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Coresite. Hi, and welcome to this episode of The Bridge. My guest on this episode is Maile Kaiser, who is the Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Coresite. How are you this evening, Maile?
Hi, Scott. Nice to see you. Thanks so much for having me on your podcast today.
Absolutely. Now, we'll just jump right into being personal here because this is what I do. So Maile, they have all seen the spelling of Maile. Can you explain it a little bit? I certainly wouldn't have spelled it that way. Tell me more.
Sure. Yes, it's always a little bit concerning when you see it for the first time and you're not quite sure how to say it. But it's actually Hawaiian. I'm not, as you can tell, Hawaiian. However, I was very lucky to have the name, and it actually means aloha and peace. So it's a fun name to have. Not very many people have it.
Well, it's good to know that this is going to be a peaceful conversation then. So
Yes.
I'm just lining that up and expecting to get somewhere. I appreciate that. How long have you been at Coresite?
I've been at Coresite almost 11 years and
Okay.
in the technology sales background for much longer than that.
Care to share any places before?
Oh, sure.
Those 11 years?
Started my career at Oracle and then moved on to AboveNet for many years and then went over to IO Data Centers and been at Coresite again for the last 11. So,
Gotcha. Always in the role that you're in now?
I'm sorry?
Always in the role that you're in now?
No, I have, started in sales and then went into management and run sales and marketing for Coresite now for the last sales for the last 5 years and sales and marketing for the last year.
Got it. Interesting. Marketing post-pandemic, huh? That's
Marketing.
what got added.
We have a fantastic team, so I'm very lucky.
Certainly. I understand it. We hear a lot about Coresite out in the market. I'm going to give you an opportunity to give us that commercial, but not until we learn a little bit more. So we know the name is Hawaiian. We know a little bit about your background from a work perspective. Care to share any more? Where do you live? Family, interests?
Absolutely. So I live in Manhattan Beach, California, and I'm actually a fourth generation Angelino, sixth generation Southern California girl. So I think I'm one of the few out there. I have three wonderful kids, two boys and a girl, 19, 16, and 14. And two awesome dogs. You might hear them. Hopefully you don't. And interests, I love to travel, love to watch my kids in sports, and just really enjoy what I do. So life is good.
Amazing. That's amazing. It won't be the first time we've heard dogs on the pod, so I wouldn't worry about that. You mentioned travel, so that I think that's a good segue. Does the opportunity, your job at Coresite, give you an opportunity to travel a bit?
It does. Actually, before the pandemic, I was traveling quite a bit, probably twice a month. Fortunately, I've been able to scale that back and probably travel once a month, but to wonderful places. Every market that Coresite is in is a great place to travel to. And then for personal travel, I love to go to Hawaii. So
shocking,
I know.
So give us the spread then, because you talked about exciting locations with Coresite. So before we get the Coresite story, give me the locations. How far is the spread? Global, domestic?
Sure. So we're U.S. based. Coresite is U.S. based, but we were just recently acquired last December 2021 by American Tower. American Tower is one of the largest global REITs, so they have a global footprint all over the world. And we roll up into their U.S. division. So Coresite is U.S. based today.
Got you. Okay. Well, let's do that. I mean, we could explore American Tower, and that whole relationship makes sense. I think people get it. But talking about Coresite, so you run sales and marketing. Nobody better to give us the pitch. Tell us about Coresite.
Sure. Thank you. So Coresite is, we own and operate data centers around the U.S. We're in 10 major markets. We really are focused on interconnection-rich data center campuses. So in each one of our markets, we're really trying to bring a community of companies together to interoperate their workloads. So from your network provider to your service provider, your cloud provider, your enterprise, your managed services provider, anybody that has a piece of that digital workflow, how to bring them together and interconnect within our data center or around our data centers. And so that's really the focus. We try to make sure that our customers can scale with us in the communities that we're in, and then also be able to reach the major cloud providers and service providers that they need to connect to support their hybrid infrastructure.
Got you. I wanted you to say something again, and I was making a mental note. You said interconnected rich, or give me that phrase one more time.
Sure. Interconnected rich data center campuses. So, what do I mean by that?
No, I get that. I liked it. It was the thing that popped out at me. Let me read that back then. I should think of that as people need hybrid environments. You're operating data centers, and you want to put them places where it's easy for them to tie those workloads to everything else they have going on. How'd I do?
You did great. Yes. So if you think about a company and they're running their business and they have many different applications, they own some of their own infrastructure, they're trying to reach cloud providers, they might have several providers that they're working with for data analytics, for production, for DR. Their database might be sitting over here and they're running different workloads over here, storage. They've got a very, very complicated complex hybrid infrastructure. And the idea is to bring their infrastructure as close to their cloud and their service providers as possible. So the idea is we are the location and the hub for where those native cloud on-ramps sit. So how quickly can you reach for your data from your infrastructure into the cloud and back? And we provide that location to do so, where it is the lowest latency, the least expensive option to interconnect that data and that workflow. And we do that in all of the different markets that we're in.
So let me trace the history with you. You said you've been there for more than a decade, and then you just talked quite a bit about having data center assets close to applications. And I'm going to guess a lot of these applications that we're talking about probably weren't quite so popular a decade ago, maybe, right? Mm-hmm. Has the charter changed?
Just a year ago. Right.
Yeah. Has the charter changed? Was that the mission 10 years ago, or is it sort of, how has it morphed over that time frame?
That's a great question. And actually it has evolved. And I think we're continuing to see an evolution of what we call edge compute. So 10 years ago, companies, and think about a traditional enterprise, they would host their infrastructure either on-prem in their own data center or in a colocation facility. And the things that they looked for as kind of the most important were no risk of natural disaster and low cost of power. And they would probably put that infrastructure somewhere, far away from anything else, and they would connect it back to their office. So they had one carrier connection to their office, and that was really it. And now everyone is running in a distributed architecture, which means they don't just have one data center, they probably have several for redundancy, but also to reach their customers or to their partners and to be able to get their applications as close to the end user as possible, or as close to their customer as possible to support the performance of that application. And so it's no longer about, let me go put my infrastructure, in a kind of market where I can then connect everything back to my office. It's now, where are my customers? Where are my users? And make sure that I have where's my cloud provider? Where's that edge compute sitting? And put my infrastructure as close to that as possible. So we're now seeing what we call this evolution to the edge. And we're looking at customers that don't want to just have one centralized location, but to be able to connect out to many different locations, needing to connect to different partners in different locations. I want to connect to a cloud region over here and a cloud region for backup on the other side of the country. How do I do that? And so Coresite has really always been kind of the center location for reaching networks. And then that evolved into reaching cloud providers, and then evolving into reaching your CDN, your service provider, anybody else that's also in that ecosystem. And so that's really the evolution. And I think we're going to see eventually Coresite in more locations to be able to support that compute going further and further to where the customer or the user sits.
So a few things popped out there. A great
Sure.
description. So I think most of the listeners of this pod will get kind of the growth of cloud, right? We get that. So it was probably, these were more traditional locations, data center only, largely one connection back to the headquarters. Cloud became part of the equation. So still probably one big connection back to the headquarters, because they might be treating the colo like the security edge, and then out to the cloud providers. Okay, so I get that as the next stage. But what we hear all the time on the pod, and I'd be interested in your thinking on this one. I don't care what the provider is. They might be one of the cloud providers you talked about. We've had some of them on here. They may be infrastructure and network providers. They could be security providers. The one big conversation, because we do try and center a bit of our conversation about the pandemic, how did it change our businesses? And I think we would normally wait a little bit to ask that question, but let me just throw it in here now. So often the conversations we have is that the network flipped. And what I mean by that is, as an example, I'll have a network provider on here and they'll be like, we sold a ton of bandwidth in March and April of 2020 just to get people from the home into the office only to go back out to the cloud. That's sort of that thing that you were talking about moving it to the data center. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the one entry point, the cloud piece obviously changed over time, but the location piece maybe changed a little bit more recently in that equation. Is that a fair statement to make? Sort of the shiny buildings to the data center to the cloud. Now it's everybody to the data center to the cloud. Am I reading that right? And is that kind of recent?
I think there's been a migration for enterprise companies to move off-prem and into a colocation over the last decade, but for different reasons. It was either, when we had the financial crisis in 2009, a lot of companies said, why am I spending my capital on UPS maintenance when I should be saving it for my own core business? I don't want to be in the business of operating a data center anymore. I'm moving to a colocation facility where this is their core competency. So we saw a little bit of that 10 years ago, 15 years ago. The pandemic, I think, did the exact same thing. It accelerated why am I operating a data center when I really want my employees home or focused on something else? And I think that a lot of companies realized, one, were they prepared to be able to operate their data center 24/7 during a pandemic? And if not, it was a catalyst for moving into a colocation facility. And I think they realized data centers, we're essential, right? We have essential employees. They have to be there on site 24/7. And our customers relied on that and said, oh my goodness, if I'm in a colocation facility, you can do some of this work for me rather than me having to send somebody into a data center. I can just take advantage. You're already there. And so from a health perspective, it was safer. From you're already up and running 24/7, that was better. That was important for them. And I think they realized, we call it future proofing. Are we ready for the next event? Are we ready to take advantage of whether it's cloud or another pandemic or anything? How do I best prepare my business to stay up and running always and to be able to be ready for that next thing that's coming? And I think our customers realized, this is really important. This is important for me to have my critical infrastructure in the right place. I think the third thing that happened was hybrid, right? Hybrid workloads and the latency between when you're moving data back and forth in a hybrid environment, the closer you are between your provider and your infrastructure, the better, right? There's less hops, there's better performance, there's less latency. And I think that became critical in terms of, where is the central location for me to reach multiple cloud providers the best way I can? So I think those are kind of the three catalysts, if you will, as to why a company like Coresite has been helpful to the customers and to IT professionals that are thinking through these issues and what do I do? Those are kind of some of the things that we've seen as reasons for them to look at, the solution here that Coresite provides.
It's interesting. Sort of pre-pandemic, at the early phases of this, would you consider the co-location facility often the center of the customer's network, where the locations hung off, or is that where the data lived and kind of the hub of the network, the core of the network was still at their location?
I think the core of the network was, it's always been, important to put the network inside of the data center from you've the uptime and the reliability and how critical it is to keep your network up. But your network is everywhere, right? Your network is everywhere you're trying to connect it to. I think what companies realized is just how critical that network is to their business, and what is riding off that network is so critical, and where the network extended beyond just the customer's infrastructure, right? So it wasn't just, I need access to the internet and I need access to my data. It was, wait a minute, I need access to the internet, my data, my cloud provider, my service provider, my security provider, my network provider. And all of a sudden your ecosystem or your little community that supports your business is much larger than it used to be. There's more connections sitting on that network than ever before.
You've used the word hybrid a handful of times. I know I did as well. Take a step back and define that for a minute. As companies who are running workloads, arguably in public cloud and on cloud applications, and then also have services and solutions running on their own hardware potentially, or on bare metal in a data center like Coresite's. First off, our definitions are the same, yes?
Yes.
Okay. So, do you feel like, we get into these cycles talking about tech, and it was cloud. And, I've run into a lot of scenarios where customers just sort of picked up their entire workload that used to be in the on-prem data center, listened to the board, and threw the whole thing into public cloud.
Sure.
And we're talking, and kind of hybrid is the word of the day today. Can you speak to that a little bit? Have you guys found that there's a reflex kind of back out of public to you, and in what situations? Explain that a little bit.
Absolutely. So the repatriation, right? So they put it into, so I like to call it, everybody used to say cloud first. That was kind of we've got to go cloud first. But then when they did, they realized not every application works well in the cloud or in that particular cloud. Also, there's a lot of applications that are being born in the cloud. So the only way you can actually run them is through the public cloud. So I think what we found, and I did not coin this phrase, so I'm going to borrow it, but I heard maybe 6 months ago, cloud smart. So now it is, okay, I need cloud. Absolutely, everybody needs it, but I need to be smart about what I'm putting and where. And that, I think, is how hybrid and multi-cloud architectures were born, is companies realize I need to use Azure for, my backup and DR, or for Office 360, or I need Google for the analytics, and I'm doing machine learning, and I'm using AWS with production. And I have all these different components to my business. Some are running on AWS, some are running on Oracle, some are running on Google. And, I also have applications that I want to run myself because might be cheaper, might be, once I'm at a steady state, I actually have the infrastructure I own myself is less expensive, but I still need to connect and talk to whatever I'm doing in the cloud. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden you have this very, I don't want to call it complicated. It is complicated, but it's a hybrid architecture of using many different types of cloud and then being able to manage all of that. That's how Coresite helps. We help you with a managed solution where you can actually connect cloud to cloud within our Open Cloud Exchange. So you can actually have many different connections open to all the different cloud providers, and you can move workloads back and forth. Or you have a physical connection right into their direct connect inside of our data center, where you might have 100 gigs that you need to transfer back and forth, and you can do that right there inside the data center. And then you can also go from, if you're working with AWS on the west and you want the west region, and then you need a DR connection to the east, you just go right through the Open Cloud Exchange to connect to that. So the idea is you're not going to just have all your infrastructure in one basket anymore. And you're not going to only have it in the public cloud anymore. Yeah. You're going to have it wherever it makes sense.
Let's key on an Open Cloud Exchange for a minute. Really interesting. We talked about it a little bit in the pre-call. What am I looking at? And I'm a guy, I've been a CTO, I've been a company founder, I've been in cloud, am I looking at your UI in that to control the other cloud? Am I just looking at, like, if I go in, how do I see hybrid and open cloud exchange? What am I
Sure.
looking at?
What does it mean? It's a
Yeah.
software defined network. So
Okay.
we actually built a platform within our data center, and then we connected all of the data centers together in all of the different markets. And it's another way to reach anyone in the community. So it extends within our campus. So if you're in Santa Clara, and we have 9 data centers in Santa Clara, you can get to anybody in any of the data centers through our Open Cloud Exchange. But you can also go intermarket to Los Angeles or to Denver or to Chicago or to New York or Virginia or Boston, Miami. And you can get to anyone anywhere else as well. So the idea is that you have a layer 2, layer 3. You can reach all the public cloud providers through there, and you can turn up, turn down service. It's automated, it's simple, and it's a very easy connection. And it's a way to reach anyone in your community that is in that, that is also on the Open Cloud Exchange.
So I should think of this as sort of gone are the days of the, physical cross connect, right? Where you're logically connected into the core, and then you say, I want to turn up X amount to Y provider in Z data center because they're in the exchange already.
It's funny. We offer both, and there's always a reason for a physical connection, right? Because if you're doing hundreds of gigs of connectivity, you might need a physical connection, a physical cross connect. But the physical cross connect is going to take you within the data center, right? Mm-hmm. Or we have what we call a campus cross connect. If our 2 data centers are close together, you can do a campus cross connect. But again, it's going to be a 1-to-1 physical connection. And we absolutely, do that all day long for our customers. The Open Cloud Exchange just takes that to that logical layer. It is a very quick automated turn up, turn down, move traffic from one provider to the next. You have a lot of flexibility when let's say a new game is coming out and you need to reach AWS for, a month. You're bursting beyond what you ever thought you would do. Then you're going to maybe bring that EVC down to a smaller bandwidth when you get to a more steady state, and then burst it back up when you need to again, or add another provider onto that port. And now you've got multiple providers. You can connect your data back and forth between those providers. It's another very simple, easy tool to use to interconnect with anyone you're reaching.
Makes perfect sense. Okay, well, with that in mind, then let me, we've talked quite a bit about Coresite as a company, right? The things that you sell, but you guys yourselves are a business, right? Who went through many of the same things that our customers have. So just to knit this in with some of the other episodes that we have, I mean, you're obviously on the executive, team there at Coresite. You were probably, at least I hope, given the question I'm about to pose in some of the conversations. Take me back to being a company leader at the beginning of the pandemic. It's March, 12th to 14th, somewhere in there. I think it was that week when we realized it was real. Tell us about that. When did you all have a meeting about it, and what was discussed, and what did you do in those first days?
Well, I remember the last board meeting we all sat in together was in Virginia on, I think, March 3rd. And we did not go back to work as of March 9th. And that was the day the LA Unified School District decided to keep all the children home. And we decided that once the school systems decided to, not go back to school, that was the day that we were not going back to work, basically, because, you've got kids at home. So I think for us, that was what I recall, and there might have been other factors that went into the decision, but that was really kind of the big aha moment when schools were not going, kids were not going back into class. We were not going back into the office, except obviously, as I mentioned, all of our essential workers. So we stayed operational 24/7. what we did there was no other employee who was outside of data center operations was allowed to go into the data center. And that kept our data center operations team safe and healthy because no one was exposing them. And that was really critical.
Did you have to go through the process of getting your company certified as an essential worker in some of the states you were in before you could send them in, or was that always the case?
Oh no, we never stopped sending them in. They were always in. We definitely were considered essential, whatever process that is, but there was never a time when they weren't in the data center 24/7. Yeah.
So tell me how it worked. I mean, obviously you sent employees home, as did all of our customers. You probably experienced many of the same problems our customers did. So let's commiserate with some of the listeners a little bit. Tell us what you did, maybe some things that worked. If you're willing to, some things that didn't, would be great to hear, and what you did about that later.
So, I think for the sales team, it was still business as usual because sales was kind of 24/7 also, not really, I wouldn't say that we're working all night long. We're not, but we were always available, and we, people worked from wherever. It didn't really matter. They were still working. So I think sales was probably the easiest transition to remote because, they were used to being on the road anyways, or being out of the office, I should say anyways. I think the biggest, question was, how do you talk to customers if you can't see them? And all of the events went away. Every conference, trade show, even data center tours, which we rely on. No one's coming into the data center to tour a data center during the pandemic. So we actually created virtual tours. We went in and I was one of the cameramen that went in and basically ran a tour of our data center so that we could put it up on video so that people could actually see virtually what our product was. We did a lot of webinar, live chats with customers. Obviously, we took advantage of all of the video conferencing as soon as we could and implemented that very quickly. We already had it, but we were, as everyone remembers, we used conference calls. We didn't do video. And so, that became the new thing to see each other on the laptop versus in face to face. I think so for marketing, that was a struggle, right? It's, oh my gosh, everything we do is on hold. We have to pivot and come up with something new. And so that, the good news is we had a lot of relationships already built with customers. So those connections remained. Finding new customers and getting them interested in Coresite, we had to kind of come up with all new ways of reaching them.
Thinking about that.
And I think that we were lucky that a lot of these ideas worked. We also saw that our customers, I think there was maybe 2 months of everybody froze and said, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Can I support remote working?
Yeah.
And then after about 2 months of every project went on hold, they all realized, oh my goodness, I need to accelerate what I was going to do with data centers or colocation because I need to be better prepared. And so I would say our sales team saw this halt, stop, freeze, go. And it was like a rocket ship after that. Yeah.
Well, it was an impending event, right? I mean, the best IT projects that don't happen just lack an impending event to get them started. And all of a sudden there it was, right?
There it was. Yes.
Yeah. You mentioned a couple of interesting things in the middle of that, that I kind of wanted to point out. One, was on collaboration. We've heard on some of these other things. You said we implemented the video conferencing. Of course we had that, right? One of the things that one of our other guests said, not in your industry, said we spent much of the time in the weeks after the pandemic teaching people how to use things they already had. It feel familiar a little bit?
Yes. I mean, we we'd been using all of this technology, but just not in the way, in this new functionality that you could use it, right? I mean, we used chat and we used, all of the conference calls, but I remember being on all of these same calls, but never did we actually see each other because we saw each other in the office, right? Totally. So now all of a sudden I'm looking at the Brady Bunch squares constantly, and we still use it every single day. So that didn't go away post-pandemic.
Well, and one other thing that you mentioned there that was echoed on another one of our shows, someone else, again, different industry, that was on the show had said that, we stopped calling people using phone calls. It was all about phone calls. And now we only have meetings. So you have to have a half-hour meeting for a 5-minute phone call. Do you feel the same way?
Oh my goodness. I got to a point where my calendar was filled back to back to back to back, and there was no time to get up and get out of your chair. So you'd spend 12 hours a day just sitting because everybody's now taking every, to your point, half hour when they didn't need a half hour. And I was trying to say, should we implement 15-minute meetings and 45-minute meetings or 20? So just giving back a little bit of a hallway time that we missed. Yeah. So, and then I think that was also a struggle today with going back to work. And we've implemented, kind of a twice a week, go back to work, and everybody goes to the office on Tuesday. And we do that because what a difference it makes. I was just in the office yesterday. The entire team is there. We're all talking about things that we wouldn't necessarily be chatting about unless we had scheduled time to, but we're just having so much of a strategic conversation that doesn't always get to happen unless you schedule it on your video. Yeah. So what a difference. And we all laughed and said, doesn't this feel like pre-COVID? This is so great that we're all here. But scheduling the time to drive in to the office is now very difficult because, my meetings start at 8. When am I going to get into the office? So when am I going to get home?
Expect the calendar if it's open for you to be available, right?
Exactly.
Particularly. Well, you answered what was going to be my next question, which is what have you guys decided around hybrid work? So we get that, which means that we can get to the fun. So we're right up against it. I'm going to ask you a couple of fun questions.
Sure.
Some you might be prepared for, some you might not be. That's okay.
Okay.
So here's the first one. I need a shameless prediction. It doesn't need to be about business, although it can be. That's perfectly fine. But it could be something, entertainment, macroeconomic, whatever it is. Just prognosticate for all of us so we can have some fun if it happens about the next 12 to 18 months. Give us something.
Oh my goodness. The next 12 to 18 months. I don't want to sound boring and say business as usual. I think we're going to see, I'm excited because with American Tower, I feel like finally Coresite's going to move into new markets and grow to the edge, which is the whole point of American Tower and Coresite coming together. So whether it happens in the next 12 months, it takes a little longer.
That's okay.
But I'm excited for where we're going. I'm excited for the edge. We talk about the metaverse and we talk about autonomous vehicles and we talk about all these things that are coming, AI and mixed reality. And I am super excited about just the opportunity for companies to do more with edge and more with 5G and more with, the new applications that haven't even been created yet. So I get excited for every year just because in our business, technology is being created every day. And so I'm excited for Coresite American Tower because we actually are situated to be right there to support when this incredible, new world comes and needs to sit out at the edge. We'll be there to support it. So I'm excited about that. But is that 12 months? It could be 3 years. Who knows?
Oh, hey, listen, we're there. We got it. Okay, here's the next question. We'll tie them together then. So you're talking about all these new apps that, by the way, have to live in a data center somewhere, which I know is why you're excited. But if we're talking about all those new apps, so let's just assume the next pandemic happens. You can decide whatever that is. Some people have said it's asteroid or zombie apocalypse or something. I'm not asking you what that is. I'm just saying it occurs, and only one application is still working on your mobile device.
Is it the one I use the most that you want to know
it's whatever one you're deciding in the condition of your, dystopian future that you are absolutely going to need to have going forward.
Oh, goodness. Well, the one I use the most is Instagram, but I mean, I kind of feel like that's a little outdated because my kids use Snap, and I'm sure there's something new, and there's TikTok, right? I haven't gotten on TikTok yet, so I have some work to do to kind of get up with the times. But for me, it's the connection with people and my friends and my family that I don't ever want to lose. So whatever app that looks like down the road, or the one I use today, or a combination of them, that is critical for me. Super
fair answer. And of course, I mean, look, if it is a zombie apocalypse, it'll be really entertaining to see what ends up in your feed and Instagram or what have you. So no, I like that. That's a good one. Okay. So last one, here's the challenging one. I'm going to ask you to pick your favorite supporting role. And we do this because everybody on the show's a leader. They wouldn't be a leader if they also weren't good at supporting, but you have to pick a supporting role. So you can pick, I'll give you some examples of things you can pick from. But you can always go off script a little bit. We say to people, hey, you can be the bass player in your favorite band, or you can be the supporting actor in your favorite movie, or the, gadget off the bench player on your favorite sports team, or the, co-author of your favorite book, whatever that is. But if you had to pick a supporting role you wanted to be, what would it be?
Oh, goodness. That's a hard question.
It is, right?
Well, my favorite supporting role that I already play is Mother. So I don't know if I get to use that one.
It's the best answer I've heard all season. So please hit that one. There
you
tell
go.
Us that.
Yeah, because that's my job. I'm the supporting role in 3 humans' lives, and I'm trying to help them be the best leader they can be. And so, I guess I'm cheating because I already have that role. But that is my favorite role. I think, I thought you were going to say, who's your favorite that you'd ever want to be? And I might say Steph Curry, because I think he's incredible, but he's not a supporting role. He's a leader.
But you know what? That's okay. I mean, here's
everybody around him that supports him, I'm envious of.
Look, I mean, I look at that though, like, yes, he's not a supporting role, at least because in his production, but the position he plays is generally considered a supporting role, right? I mean, I guess that's how you lead, which gets back to your first answer, which was beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Like, listen, I get it. Leaders lead by support at the end of the day, servant leadership, right? So words of wisdom that we can take as a nugget at the end of this are really good. Our producers over here are scratching something down on paper. So I'm sure we'll do something with that.
Yeah.
So thank you, by the way. This was a great conversation. Really
you.
Appreciate the time. If a listener of ours, aside obviously from reaching out to their friendly neighborhood Bridgepoint strategist, wants to learn more about Coresite, how would they do that?
Well, easiest thing to do is to go to our website, coresite.com, Coresite.com. We have a new video coming online that you can click on that talks all about the OCX and also the native cloud on-ramps I mentioned. And it's a great analogy to flying and your nonstop flight versus your, kind of multi-stop flight, and how you get your data from one place to another. It's fantastic. So check that out. But that's the easiest way to reach us and to learn more about who we are and what we do. And anyone that wants to have a conversation with me would love to have it. So thank you so much for including me here.
I'm really thrilled we got an opportunity to do this. This show, as our listeners know, is sponsored by Bridgepoint Technologies, who is a partner of Coresite, and we're happy to be engaged and can plug in to assist in any of your needs in that regard as well. But really happy to have had you, Maile. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for your time, and thank all of you out there in the interwebs for listening to this episode of The Bridge. Listen, if you made it this far, there must have been some good content, or you're just a fan, or a relative of mine. In either case, we appreciate you spending your most valuable asset with us, your time. We don't take that lightly. We'd also like to say one more time that we are appreciative of Bridgepoint Technologies and their belief and sponsorship of the show. We hope that if you or someone you know is thinking about your company's digital transformation, or simply the next IT project that you may not have the resources, budget, or time to get to, I'm sure that Bridgepoint, one of the country's fastest growing technology advisory and procurement firms, can help. Check out Bridgepoint at bridgepointtechnologies.com. Don't forget the E on Bridgepoint, or simply reach out to me at Skinka, SKINKA, at bpt3.net. Also, take a minute, please, if you would, to give us a 5-star review on your favorite platform. It helps gives us the visibility to reach other people like you. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Bridge. I am Scott Kinka, and until next time, there's a lot of noise out there. In business and in life, do what you can to be the signal. Thanks.